A young shieldmaiden discovers she's Odin's last daughter, marked by a glowing rune and hunted by a ruthless warlord. With the legendary spear Gungnir, Sigrid must fight to unite the Viking clans or unleash Ragnarök. Will she embrace her destiny or fall to the gods' will? Watch her epic saga unfold.
Chapter 1. The blood rune. The wind howled through the fjord, sharp as a wolf's teeth, cutting across the cliffs that guarded Sigrid's village. It was late summer, and the air carried the bite of coming winter. Sigrid, 18 winters old, stood on the rocky shore, her boots sinking into the damp pebbles. Her shield, heavy oak, rimmed with iron, rested against her side. She gripped her training sword, its blunt edge glinting in the pale sun. Her braid, thick and blonde as ripe wheat, swung as she turned to face her father, Jarl Eirik. Again, Eirik barked, his voice rough like the sea. He held his own shield, scarred from years of battle, and a wooden sword like hers. His beard, streaked with gray, fluttered in the wind. "You're slow, Sigrid. A Dane would have gutted you by now." Sigrid's jaw tightened. She wasn't slow. She was the best shield maiden in the village, faster than the boys who trained beside her, stronger than most. But Eirik never praised her. He pushed, always pushed, as if he saw something in her she couldn't. She raised her shield muscles, burning, and charged. Their swords clashed, wood cracking against wood. Sigrid ducked under Eirik's swing, spinning to strike his side. He blocked, grunting, and shoved her back with his shield. She stumbled, but caught herself, boots scraping the stones. Her breath steamed in the cold air. She lunged again, aiming for his legs, but Eirik sidestepped, his sword tapping her shoulder. "Dead," he said, eyes hard. "Focus, girl. You fight like you're dreaming." Sigrid glared, wiping sweat from her brow. "I'm not dreaming," she snapped. "I'm ready for the raid tomorrow." Eirik's face darkened. "Ready? No one's ready for their first raid. You'll see blood, Sigrid. Real blood, not this play-fitting." She wanted to argue, to prove she wasn't some soft girl who'd flinch at a blade, but she held her tongue. Eirik was Jarl, leader of their clan, and his word was law. Besides, she'd trained for years since she was old enough to hold a shield for this. Tomorrow, their longship would sail to a rival village across the fjord, a place that had stolen their fishing grounds. Sigrid would fight beside the men, prove her worth. She'd make Eirik proud, whether he admitted it or not. "Go clean your gear," Eirik said, turning toward the village, "and pray to Odin for strength." Sigrid watched him walk away, his cloak flapping like a raven's wings. She muttered a curse under her breath, then hefted her shield and sword, trudging up the path to their longhouse. The village sprawled along the shore, wooden homes with turf roofs huddled against the cliffs. Smoke curled from chimneys, smelling of pine and fish. Children ran past, chasing a leather ball, while women wove nets near the water. The men sharpened axes, their laughter loud as they boasted about the raid. Inside the longhouse, Sigrid dropped her gear by the fire pit. The room was dim, lit by flickering flames and a single oil lamp. Her mother, Astrid, sat at a loom, her fingers quick as she wove wool into cloth. Astrid's hair, once as blonde as Sigrid's, was now pale as frost, but her eyes were sharp. "You're filthy," Astrid said, not looking up. "Wash before you eat." Sigrid rolled her eyes, but obeyed, splashing cold water from a bucket onto her face. She sat by the fire, pulling her shield onto her lap to check for damage. It was her pride, that shield round, sturdy, painted with a red wolf's head. Eirik had given it to her when she turned 15, saying it was hers by right. She ran, her fingers over the wood, feeling the familiar grain, until they caught on something strange. A carving, small, hidden under the iron rim, where the paint was worn. She squinted, holding the shield closer to the firelight. It was a rune, sharp and angular, unlike any she'd seen. It looked like a spear with two lines crossing it, almost glowing in the dim light. Her stomach twisted. Runes weren't just marks, they held power, stories, the will of the gods. Mother Sigrid called, voice low. What's this? Astrid glanced over, her hands pausing. Her face paled, just for a moment, before she forced a smile. Just a scratch, child. Old shields have marks. It's a rune, Sigrid insisted, tracing it with her finger. I've never seen it before. Astrid stood, moving to Sigrid's side. She studied the rune, her lips tight. Leave it be, she said sharply. Some things aren't for you to know. Sigrid frowned. Astrid was never harsh, not like Eirik. Why won't you tell me? Because it's nothing, Astrid snapped, then softened. Go to bed, Sigrid. You need rest for the raid. Sigrid wanted to argue, but Astrid's eyes were firm. She set the shield down, unease curling in her chest. That night, she lay on her straw pallet, staring at the rafters. The rune haunted her thoughts. Why had it appeared now? Was it always there, hidden? She drifted into sleep, and the dreams came. She stood on a cliff, wind screaming around her. The sky was black, split by lightning. A figure stood before her, tall, cloaked, one eye glowing like a star. A raven perched on his shoulder, its beak sharp as a blade. Sigrid, the figure said, voice deep as thunder. The blood calls you. She woke with a gasp, heart pounding. The longhouse was quiet, the fire low. Outside, the wind moaned, like a warning. She clutched the amulet. She wore a small iron hammer, Thor's symbol for comfort, but the dream clung to her. It felt real, too real. Morning came, gray and cold. The village buzzed with purpose as the warriors gathered by the longship. It was a sleek beast, its prow carved into a snarling dragon, oars lined like ribs. Sigrid strapped on her leather armor, her shield slung across her back, her real sword a sharp, heavy blade at her hip. Eirik stood by the ship, his helmet gleaming, giving orders. He saw her and nodded, a rare sign of approval. Stay close, he said, and don't be reckless. She nodded, her blood hot with excitement and fear. The crew of 20 warriors climbed aboard, their shields clattering. Sigrid took her place at an oar, pulling with the others as the ship slid into the fjord. The water was dark, reflecting the stormy sky. Gulls screamed overhead, and Sigrid felt the rune's weight in her mind, like a stone in her gut. The journey was short, the rival village just across the water. They landed on a pebbled beach, the dragon prow scraping the shore. Eirik raised his axe, signaling silence. The warriors moved like shadows, creeping toward the village. It was smaller than theirs, with fewer homes, but guards patrolled with spears. Sigrid's heart raced. This was no training. This was real. Eirik whispered the plan. Strike fast, burn their boats, take their stores. Sigrid gripped her sword, her shield ready. They charged. The fight was chaos. Men shouted, steel rang, blood sprayed. Sigrid blocked a spear with her shield, thrusting her sword into a warrior's side. He fell, groaning, and she froze, staring at the blood on her blade. Her first kill. Eirik's voice snapped her back, yelling for her to move. She fought on, her training guiding her, but the rune on her shield seemed to burn under her grip. A rival warrior, huge and bearded, swung an axe at her. She raised her shield, and the axe struck hard, splintering wood. Blood from her cut arm dripped onto the shield, and the rune flared bright, red, alive. The warrior staggered back, eyes wide, as if he'd seen a ghost. Sigrid didn't hesitate. She drove her sword into his chest, and he fell. The raid ended quickly. The rival boats burned, their stores were taken, and the survivors fled. Sigrid's clan cheered, but she stood still, staring at her shield. The rune glowed faintly, then faded. Her hands shook. What was it? Back at the longship, Eirik pulled her aside. His face was pale, his eyes locked on her shield. Where did you see that? He demanded. It was there, Sigrid said, voice trembling. Under the rim, it glowed. Eric's jaw tightened. He grabbed her arm, pulling her away from the others. Listen, Sigrid, he whispered, voice low and urgent. That rune is Odin's mark. It ties you to him, to a prophecy. You're his blood, his last daughter. Sigrid stared, her mind spinning. What? That's impossible. It's true, Eric said. I hid it from you, to protect you. But now it's awake. They'll come for you, Sigrid. They'll hunt you. Who? She asked, fear rising. Those who want Odin's power, he said, or fear it. Before she could ask more, a horn sounded in the distance. Eric's eyes widened. Thrain, he muttered. He's found us. The name sent a chill through. Sigrid, Jarl Thrain, a warlord from the south, was a monster in stories, ruthless, hungry for power. If he knew about her, about the rune, get to the ship, Eirik ordered. Now, Sigrid ran, her shield heavy on her back. The warriors scrambled to the longship, but as they pushed off, arrows rained from the cliffs. Thrain's men, cloaked in black, appeared like wraiths. Eirik roared orders, but an arrow struck his shoulder. He stumbled, blood soaking his cloak. Father, Sigrid screamed, reaching for him. Go, he shouted, pushing her toward the ship. Find the Cirrus and Kattegat. She'll guide you. Another arrow hit him, in the chest. He fell to his knees, eyes fierce. You are Odin's, he gasped. Never forget. Sigrid froze, tears burning her eyes. The warriors pulled her onto the ship as Thrain's men closed in. The oars dipped, the longship surged forward, and her father's body vanished into the chaos. She clutched her shield, the rune cold now, and swore to survive. For Eirik, for herself, for whatever Odin had planned. Chapter 2. The hunt begins. The longship cut through the fjord's dark waters, oars slapping in rhythm. Sigrid sat at the stern, her hands tight on her shield. The rune's faint outline burned into her mind. Her father's blood still stained her sleeve, a dark smear that felt heavier than her sword. Eirik was gone. The words didn't fit in her head, like a blade too big for its sheath. Just hours ago, he'd stood tall, barking orders, his eyes fierce with pride. Now he was dead, struck down by Thrain's arrows, his last words echoing, "Find the Cirrus in Kattegat." The crew was silent, their faces grim under helmets. Only 10 had made it back to the ship, half the men who'd left that morning. The rest lay dead on the rival village's shore, or worse, captured by Thrain's warriors. Sigrid's chest ached, not just for Eirik, but for the others. Gungnir, who'd taught her to throw a spear. Leif, who'd laughed loudest at the fire. All gone. Sigrid called Bjarni, the ship's steersman, his voice rough over the wind. You hurt? She shook her head, though her arm stung where a blade had grazed it during the raid. The cut was shallow, but it throbbed, a reminder of the rune's glow when her blood touched it. She didn't tell Bjarni that. She didn't trust her voice, didn't trust anyone, not after her father's warning. They'll hunt you. The sky was heavy, clouds thick as wool, promising rain. The fjord's cliffs loomed on both sides, their jagged edges like teeth. Sigrid scanned them, half expecting Thrain's men to appear again, their black cloaks flapping like ravens. The horn from the shore still rang in her ears, a deep wail that had sent the crew scrambling. Thrain wasn't just a raider. He was a warlord, his name whispered in fear from here to the Danelands. If he wanted her, he wouldn't stop. We can't go home, Bjarni said, his hands steady on the tiller. Thrain's men will be waiting. They hit the village next. Sigrid's stomach twisted. Her mother, Astrid, was there, with the children, the elders. We have to warn them, she said, standing. Bjarni's eyes were hard. Too late. Thrain's fast. We'd sail into a trap. Then where? She asked, her voice sharp. She wanted to scream, to fight, to do something. Eirik's death, the rune, the prophecy, was too much, pressing down like a stone. Kattegat, Bjarni said. Your father said to find the seeress. She's our best chance. Sigrid nodded, though doubt gnawed at her. A seeress, some old woman muttering over bones and runes. But Eirik had believed in her, and Sigrid had nothing else. She clutched the amulet at her neck, the iron hammer warm against her skin. Thor, give me strength, she thought. Odin, if you're listening, guide me. The longship sailed through the night, the crew taking turns at the oars. Sigrid didn't sleep. She kept watch, her shield across her lap, her sword close. The rune stayed dark, but she felt it, like a pulse under the wood. When dawn broke, gray and cold, the fjord widened, and Kattegat's shores appeared a sprawl of ships, tents, and wooden halls, alive with trade and noise. They docked at a crowded pier, the air thick with the smell of fish, tar, and smoke. Kattegat was bigger than Sigrid's village, its paths packed with warriors, merchants, and thralls. Men shouted over barrels of ale, women haggled over furs, and a skald's voice rose, singing of Thor's hammer. Sigrid's heart lifted, just a little. This place was alive, strong. Maybe she could find answers here. Bjarni led the crew to a tavern, a low building with a turf roof. Stay sharp, he told Sigrid. Thrain's got eyes everywhere. Inside, the tavern was warm, packed with rough voices and the clink of horns. Sigrid kept her shield close, her hood up to hide her face. She listened as Bjarni asked about the seeress. The tavern keeper, a wiry man with a scarred lip, pointed them to a hut at the edge of town. Freyas, her name, he said, but she don't see just anyone. Better have a good reason. Sigrid's fingers brushed the rune on her shield. She had a reason. They left at dusk, moving through Kattegat's winding paths. The hut stood alone, surrounded by a ring of stones carved with runes. Smoke curled from its chimney, smelling of herbs. Sigrid's pulse quickened. This was it. She knocked, her knuckles loud against the weathered door. An old woman opened it, her face lined like cracked earth, her eyes sharp as a hawk's. Her hair was white, tied with leather cords, and she wore a cloak pinned with a raven's feather. Who seeks Freya? She asked, voice low. Sigrid, daughter of Eirik, Sigrid said, standing tall. I need your help. Freya's eyes flicked to the shield, lingering on the rune. She stepped aside. Enter, child of Odin. The hut was small, its walls hung with dried herbs and bones. A fire burned in the center, casting shadows that danced like spirits. Freya motioned for Sigrid to sit. Bjarni and the others stayed, outside, guarding the door. Sigrid set her shield down, the rune catching the firelight. Show me, Freya said, nodding at the shield. Sigrid hesitated, then turned it to reveal the rune. Freya's breath caught. She traced the mark with a bony finger, muttering words Sigrid didn't know. Odin's spear, Freya whispered, the mark of his blood. You are his last, girl. Sigrid's throat tightened. My father said the same. Before he died, Thrain's men attacked us. They're hunting me. Freya's eyes narrowed. Thrain seeks power. He believes your blood will win him Odin's favor, make him a king of kings. He'll kill you, or worse, use you in a right to the gods. Sigrid gripped her sword hilt. I won't let him. Tell me what to do. Freya tossed bones into the fire, watching the flames. The runes say you must claim your power or lose it. There's a spear, Gungnir, hidden in Thrain's stronghold. It's yours by right, tied to your blood. Find it, and you'll have Odin's strength. A spear, Sigrid frowned. How will that stop Thrain? It's no mere weapon, Freya said. It's Odin's own, forged in the heart of Yggdrasil. With it, you can face him. Without it, you're prey. Sigrid's mind raced. A sacred spear. It sounded like a skald's tale. But the rune, her father's words, the dream, they all pointed to something real. Where's Thrain's stronghold? She asked. North, past the black cliffs, Freya said. but it's no easy path. His men are many, and he's not alone. A priest serves him, one who twists the god's will. You'll need allies. Sigrid thought of Bjarni and the crew, but trust felt thin. I'll go alone, if I must. Freya's laugh was dry as leaves, brave but foolish. Even Odin had warriors at his side. Find those who'll fight for you, not for gold. A shout broke the quiet outside. Sigrid grabbed her shield, sword drawn, and rushed to the door. Bjarni stood ready, his axe raised. Shadows moved in the dark, men in black cloaks, their blades glinting. Thrain's warriors. They found us, Bjarni growled. Run, Sigrid. She didn't want to run. She wanted to fight, to spill their blood for her fathers. But Freya hand gripped her arm. Live, girl. Find the spear. Odin's watching. Sigrid nodded, her heart pounding. She slipped out the back, the crew covering her escape. The night swallowed her as she ran, the rune on her shield cold but heavy with purpose. Thrain was close, his hunt begun. She'd reach his stronghold, find Gungnir, and end this or die trying. Chapter 3. The Cirrus of Kattegat. Sigrid's boots sank into the muddy path as she fled through Kattegat's outskirts, the shouts of Thrain's warriors fading behind her. The night was thick, the air heavy with salt and smoke. Her shield bounced. Against her back, the runes weighed a constant pull, like a hook in her chest. Her father's last words, find the Cirrus in Kattegat, drove her forward, even as her heart pounded with grief and fear. Eirik was dead. Her village was likely burning, and Thrain, that shadow of a man, wanted her blood. She'd lost Bjarni, and the crew in the chaos, their axes clashing with Thrain's men to buy her time. She didn't know if they lived or died, and the guilt gnawed at her, but she couldn't stop. Not now. The Cirrus, Freya, was her only hope, her father's final command. Sigrid clutched the iron hammer amulet at her neck, whispering a prayer. To Thor for strength, to Odin for guidance. The gods felt distant, but the rune on her shield felt alive, its edges sharp in her mind. Kattegat loomed ahead, its lights flickering like stars on the fjord's edge. The town was a sprawl of longhouses, tents, and docks, alive even at night, with the hum of trade and the clink of axes. Sigrid kept her hood up, her blonde braid tucked inside, blending into the shadows. Merchants shouted over barrels of fish. Warriors laughed outside taverns, and thralls scurried with burdens of wood and grain. She moved fast, sticking to the narrower paths, her eyes scanning for black cloaks. The Cirrus's hut stood at the town's edge, just as the tavern keeper had described, a squat, turf-roofed building ringed by stones carved with runes. Smoke curled from its chimney, smelling of sage and bone. Sigrid's pulse quickened. This was no ordinary place. The air felt heavy, like before a storm, and the runes on the stones seemed to hum. She knocked, her knuckles loud against the weathered door. The door creaked open, revealing an old woman, her face etched like cracked earth, her eyes sharp as a blade's edge. Her white hair was bound with leather cords, and a raven's feather pinned her cloak. Who disturbs Freya? She asked, her voice low, like the growl of a wolf. Sigrid, daughter of Eirik, Sigrid said, standing tall, despite the ache in her legs. My father sent me. He's dead. Thrain's men are hunting me. Freya's eyes flicked to Sigrid's shield, lingering on the hidden rune. She stepped aside. Enter, child. The hut was dim, lit by a fire in the center that cast shadows like dancing spirits. Herbs hung from the rafters, their scent sharp and bitter. Bones and runes littered a wooden table, and a single raven watched from a perch, its black eyes fixed on Sigrid. She set her shield down, her sword still at her hip, ready for trouble. Freya motioned for her to sit on a stool by the fire. Show me the mark, Freya said, her voice firm. Sigrid hesitated, then tilted her shield toward the firelight. The rune, hidden under the iron rim, caught the glow sharp, angular, like a spear, crossed by two lines. Freya leaned close, her breath hissing. She traced the rune with a bony finger, muttering words Sigrid didn't understand. The raven cawed, and Sigrid's skin prickled. "It's true," Freya said, her eyes locking onto Sigrid's. "You bear Odin's mark. You are his blood, his last daughter." Sigrid's throat tightened. "My father said that, before he died. But what does it mean? Why me?" Freya tossed a handful of runes into the fire. The flames flared, spitting sparks. "Long ago, Odin walked among men, leaving children with his blood. Most are gone, their lines faded. You are the last, Sigrid. The Allfather's power flows in you, tied to that rune. It woke when your blood touched it, didn't it?" Sigrid nodded, remembering the raid, the glow when her cut arm bled onto the shield. "It scared the man I fought. He froze, like he saw a ghost." Freya's lips curled, not quite a smile. "They fear you. They should, but Thrain wants that power. He serves dark gods, twists their will. He'll spill your blood in a rite. To claim Odin's strength, to rule all Norse lands." Sigrid's hand gripped her sword hilt. "I'll kill him first." Freya's laugh was dry, like leaves on stone. "Brave words, but Thrain's no lone raider. He has warriors, ships, and a priest who whispers of Ragnarök. You can't face him alone." "Then what do I do?" Sigrid asked, her voice sharp. She hated this prophecies, gods, secrets. She wanted to fight, to act, not sit in a smoky hut chasing riddles. Freya's eyes softened, just a fraction. "The runes speak of a path. There's a spear, Gungnir, Odin's own, hidden in Thrain's stronghold. It's yours by right, tied to your blood. Claim it, and you'll wield the Allfather's might. Without it, you're a girl with a sword, and Thrain will crush you." Sigrid frowned. "A spear. That's the answer." "Where's this stronghold?" "North, beyond the Black Cliffs," Freya said. "A day's sail, then a trek through the frost. But it's a fortress, guarded by men and runes. You'll need help warriors who'll fight for you, not gold." Sigrid thought of Bjotni, the crew, but they were scattered, maybe dead. Trust felt like a blade turned against her. "I don't need anyone," she said, though the words felt hollow. "Just tell me how to find it." Freya shook her head. "Pride will kill you, girl. Even Odin had his Einherjar seek allies in Kati. There's a band of outcasts, led by a man called Bjorn. He's no friend of Thrain. Find him at the old docks, but beware he worships Fenrir, the wolf. His loyalty shifts like the wind." Sigrid's jaw tightened. She didn't like the sound of Bjorn, but she had no choice. "And the rune, what does it do?" Freya's eyes darkened. "It's a door to Odin's power, but it's not yours yet. It'll grow with you, or consume you. Blood wakes it, but only will can master it. Learn, or die." A shout cut through the night, sharp and close. Sigrid grabbed her shield, sword, drawn, and moved to the door. Freya didn't flinch, her gaze steady. "They found you," she said. Thrain's men moved fast. Sigrid peered out. Shadows darted between the trees, black cloaks catching the moonlight. At least 6 men, armed with axes and spears. Her heart raced, but her hands were steady. "I can fight them." "No," Freya snapped. "Run. The back door, through the marsh. Find Bjorn. Go now." Sigrid wanted to argue, to stand and spill blood for her father, for herself. But Freya's eyes held no room for debate. She nodded, slinging her shield over her back. "Thank you," she said, the words heavy. "Survive," Freya said. "Odin's watching." Sigrid slipped out the back, the marsh's damp air swallowing her. The shouts grew louder, steel clashing, as Thrain's men reached the hut. She ran, her boots splashing through mud, the rune's pulse a beat in her chest. Kattegat's lights faded behind her, but the hunt was on. She'd find Bjorn, claim Gungnir, and face Thrain or die as Odin's last. Chapter 4. The wolves packed. Sigrid's breath steamed in the cold night air as she stumbled through the marsh, her boots sucking at the mud. Kattegat's lights were a faint glow behind her, swallowed by the dark. The shouts of Thrain's warriors had faded, but she didn't slow. Her shield, heavy with the rune's secret, bounced against her back. Her sword hung at her hip, its weight a comfort, though her heart raced with the seeress's words. Find Bjorn at the old docks. Claim Gungnir, Freya's warning about Thrain's. Hunt clung to her like damp fog. She was Odin's last daughter, marked by a rune that pulsed with power, and hunted for it. The marsh gave way to rocky ground, and the old docks appeared, a cluster of rotting piers jutting into the fjord. Broken ships leaned against the shore, their hulls cracked like old bones. The air smelled of salt and decay, and a low growl made Sigrid freeze. A shadow moved big, furred eyes glinting. A wolf. Her hand went to her sword, but the beast only stared, then slunk into the dark. She shivered, remembering Freya's words about Bjorn and his worship of Fenrir, the wolf god. Was this a sign? A fire flickered ahead, tucked behind a wrecked longship. Voices rumbled, low and rough. Sigrid crouched, peering through the gloom. 5 figures sat around the flames, 4 men and a woman, all scarred, their armor patched and mismatched. Outcasts, just as Freya had said. The biggest, a man with a shaved head and a scar splitting his face from brow to jaw, sharpened an axe. His eyes pale as ice, flicked toward her hiding spot. Who's there? He growled, standing. The others grabbed weapons, axes, spears, a bow. Sigrid's pulse quickened, but running wasn't an option. She stepped into the firelight, shield raised, sword loose in her hand. Sigrid, daughter of Eirik, she said, voice steady. I seek Bjorn. The scarred man tilted his head, his axe still ready. I'm Bjorn. Why's a girl like you looking for me? You're no thrall, not with that blade. Freya sent me, Sigrid said, meeting his gaze. Thrain's hunting me. I need allies. The group muttered, and the woman a wiry figure with dark braids. Thrain, you've got big enemies for a little thing. Sigrid bristled but kept her voice calm. I'm Odin's blood. Thrain wants me dead for it. Freya says there's a spear, Gungnir, in his stronghold. I need it to fight him. Bjorn, eyes narrowed, studying her shield. He stepped closer, towering over her, his scar twisting as he grinned. Odin's blood, eh? That's a bold claim. Show me the rune. Sigrid hesitated, then tilted her shield. The rune caught the firelight, its lines sharp as a blade. The group fell silent, even the woman's smirk fading. Bjorn's grin vanished. Fenrir's teeth, he muttered. It's real, you know it, Sigrid asked, her grip tightening on her sword. Aye, Bjorn said. My father spoke of it, Odin's mark, tied to his last heir. If Thrain wants you, he's got reason. He paused, eyes glinting. What's in it for us? Sigrid's jaw clenched. She didn't trust Bjorn as Fenrir worship set her teeth on edge, but she needed help. You hate Thrain, she said. He burned your lands, didn't he? Help me get the spear, and we'll hurt him, together. Bjorn laughed, a harsh sound. Hurt Thrain, I want him dead. But that spear, Gungnir, it's no trinket. If it's real, it's power. Power I could use. He leaned closer, his breath sour with ale. Swear you'll share it, and I'm in. Sigrid's stomach twisted. Share Odin's spear. It was hers by right, tied to her blood. But alone, she'd never reach Thrain's stronghold. I'll share its strength, she said carefully. We fight as equals. Bjorn studied her, then nodded. Done. My band's yours, for now. But cross me, girl, and Fenrir will feast on your bones. The others, Hilda, the woman with braids, Torf, a wiry archer, Ketil, a giant with a hammer, and Sven, a quiet boy barely older than Sigrid, nodded. though their eyes were wary. Sigrid didn't trust them, but she'd take what she could get. Bjorn outlined the plan. They'd sail north at dawn, using an old skiff hidden nearby, and trek to Thrain's stronghold past the Black Cliffs. The spear was kept in a shrine, guarded by warriors and runes. Thrain's priest is the real danger, Bjorn said, spitting into the fire. Calls himself a servant of Odin, but he's a snake. Knows things he shouldn't. Sigrid's skin prickled. Freya had mentioned a priest too. What things? Old magic, Bjorn said. Runes that bind, curses that kill. He'll sense you, girl, with that mark. Sigrid touched her shield, the rune cold under her fingers. Let him try. They camped by the fire, the group taking turns on watch. Sigrid didn't sleep. She sat with her shield, staring at the rune, her father's words echoing. You're his blood, his last daughter. The amulet at her neck felt heavier. Thor's hammer, a reminder of the gods watching. She thought of Eirik, his blood on the shore, and her mother, Astrid, maybe dead in their village. Anger burned in her chest, hot as the fire dot. At dawn, they boarded the skiff, a small boat barely fit for the fjord's waves. Hilda steered, her hands sure, while Torf and Ketil rowed. Sven sharpened his dagger, silent, and Bjorn stood at the prow, his axe slung across his back. Sigrid sat near the stern, her shield close, watching the cliff slide past. The water was dark, the sky gray, and a raven circled above, its cry sharp. Sigrid's heart skipped. Odin's bird, or just a scavenger. The journey was tense, the group quiet, but for the creak of oars. Bjorn told stories of Fenrir, how the wolf would break free at Ragnarök and devour the gods. Sigrid listened, uneasy. Her faith was in Thor's strength, Odin's wisdom, not a chained beast. But Bjorn's eyes gleamed when he spoke of Fenrir, like a man praying for chaos. By midday, they reached a narrow cove below the Black Cliffs. The stronghold loomed above, a fortress of stone and timber. Its walls spiked with iron. Smoke rose from its towers, and guards patrolled the paths. Sigrid's stomach nodded. This was no village raid. This was a warlord's lair. We go on foot, Bjorn said, tying the skiff to a rock. There's a hidden path, used by thralls. Stay low, move fast. Sigrid nodded, her shield ready. The group climbed, picking their way through jagged rocks and scrub. The wind carried the smell of pine and iron, and Sigrid's senses sharpened, as if the rune was waking. She felt eyes on her, not the group's, but something else, like the raven's gaze from her dream. Halfway up, Torf froze, his bow raised. Tracks, he whispered, pointing to fresh prints in the mud. Boots, at least 10 men. Bjorn cursed. Thrain scouts. They know we're here. Sigrid's hand went to her sword. Then we fight. Not yet, Bjorn snapped. We get the spear first. Move. They pressed on, faster now, the path steep and slick. Sigrid's legs burned, but she kept pace, her mind on Gungnir. If Freya was right, the spear was her only chance against Thrain. But Bjorn's words power, I could use gnawed at her. Could she trust him? His Fenrir worship felt like a shadow, ready to turn. Near the stronghold's base, they hid behind a boulder. The shrine was close, a small stone building carved into the cliff, its door marked with runes. 2 guards stood watch, their spears glinting. Sigrid's heart pounded. The spear was near, she felt it, like a pull in her blood. Bjorn whispered the plan. Torf would draw the guards with an arrow. Hilda and Ketil would flank them, and Sigrid and Bjorn would slip inside. Sven would keep watch. It was risky, but Sigrid nodded. She was ready. Torf's arrow flew, striking a guard's shield. The men shouted, charging toward the sound. Hilda and Ketil moved like wolves, their blades flashing. Sigrid and Bjorn ran for the shrine, slipping through the door. Inside, it was dark, lit by a single torch. A stone altar stood at the center, and on it a spear, its shaft carved with runes, its blade sharp enough to cut the air. Sigrid's breath caught Gungnir. It was real. She reached for it, but Bjorn grabbed her arm. "Careful," he said. "The priest's runes protect it." She saw them now, marks carved into the floor, glowing faintly, like her shield's rune. Her amulet grew warm, and the rune on her shield pulsed. She stepped forward, ignoring Bjorn's warning, and touched the spear. A shock ran through her, like lightning, and the runes flared. The air hummed, and for a moment she saw him one-eyed, his cloak dark as night. "Take it," his voice whispered, deep as thunder. She grabbed Gungnir, its weight perfect in her hands. But shouts rang outside. More guards. Too many. Bjorn cursed. "We're trapped." Sigrid gripped the spear, her blood singing. "Then we fight." Chapter 5. The storm's call. Sigrid clutched Gungnir, its rune-carved shaft humming under her fingers, as shouts echoed outside the shrine. The air inside the stone chamber was thick, heavy with the scent of damp earth and old blood. Bjorn stood beside her, his scarred face tense, axe raised toward the door. The glow of the shrine's runes faded, but Sigrid's shield pulsed with a faint heat, its own rune Odin's mark alive in her grip. The vision of the one-eyed god lingered in her mind, his voice a whisper. "Take it." She had the spear, but Thrain's guards were closing in, their boots pounding like war drums. "Move," Bjorn hissed, shoving her toward the shrine's back. "Exit." Sigrid ran, Gungnir light, despite its size, her shield slung across her back. They burst into the night, the black cliffs looming above Thrain's stronghold. Hilda, Ketil, Torf, and Sven waited in the shadows, their weapons bloodied from the fight with the guards. The plan had worked barely, but more warriors were coming, their torches flickering through the trees. "No time to hide," Hilda said, her braids swinging as she scanned the path. "There are too many." Sigrid's heart raced, but her grip on Gungnir steadied her. "We head for the skiff," she said, "down the cliff path. Now." Ketil, the giant with the hammer, grunted. "They'll cut us off. Look," he pointed, to the ridge, where silhouettes moved 10, maybe 12 men, armed with spears and axes. Thrain's forces were fast, too fast. Bjorn spat into the dirt. Fenrir cursed them. "We fight, or we run. Your call, Odin's daughter." Sigrid's jaw tightened. She wasn't ready to die, not after claiming Gungnir. "Run," she said. "We'll lose them in the storm." The sky answered her words, splitting with a crack of thunder. Clouds rolled in, black as soot, and rain began to fall, cold and sharp. The group sprinted down the narrow path, rocks slipping under their boots. Sigrid led Gungnir in one hand, her sword in the other. The rune on her shield seemed to burn, guiding her steps through the dark. Behind them, Thrain's men shouted, their voices swallowed by the wind. The path twisted toward the cove, where their skiff waited. But the storm grew fiercer, rain lashing like whips, lightning flashing across the fjord. A gust knocked Sven off his feet, and Torf hauled him up, cursing. "This isn't natural," Torf yelled over the roar. "The priest's work." Sigrid remembered Freya's warning about Thrain's priest, a man who twisted the god's will. Could he command storms? She pushed the thought aside, focusing on the path. The cove was close, but a fallen tree blocked their way, its roots torn from the earth. Lightning struck nearby, the air crackling, and Sigrid's amulet hammer grew warm against her chest. "No way through," Hilda shouted, her spear raised against the rain. "We're trapped." Sigrid scanned the cliffs. A cave yawned to their left, its mouth dark but sheltered. "There," she yelled, pointing. "We wait out the storm." Bjorn hesitated, his eyes on the approaching torches. "If we hide, they'll find us. Then we fight from cover," Sigrid snapped, her voice sharp as the spear in her hand. She didn't wait for his answer, running for the cave. The others followed, their breaths heavy, their armor clinking. Inside, the cave was cold, its walls slick with moss. The storm's roar dulled, but lightning lit the entrance, casting jagged shadows. Sigrid leaned against the rock, Gungnir's runes glowing faintly in the dark. Her shield felt heavier, the rune pulsing like a heartbeat. She was soaked, her blonde braid dripping, but her blood burned hot. Eric's death, Thrain's hunt, Odin's marquette was too much. Yet Gungnir felt right in her hands, like it belonged there. Bjorn crouched near the entrance, his axe ready. "They'll come," he said, his scar twisting as he glared at her. "You and that spear are trouble, girl. Fenrir's hunger grows when gods meddle." Sigrid met his gaze, unflinching. "You wanted to hurt Thrain. This is the path. Don't whine now." Hilda snorted, wiping rain from her face. "She's got fire, Bjorn. Leave her be." Ketil and Torf sat up near the cave's mouth, watching the storm. Sven, the youngest, huddled deeper in, his dagger shaking in his hand. Sigrid felt a pang. He was barely 16, too young for this. But so was she, and Odin didn't care about age. The storm raged on, thunder shaking the cave. Sigrid's eyes grew heavy, the weight of the day her father's death, the rune, the spear pulling her down. She fought to stay awake, but the cave's dark and the storm's rhythm lulled her. Her head nodded, and she slipped into a dream. She stood on a cliff, the same one from her first dream, wind screaming around her. The sky was black, lightning splitting it like a blade. Odin stood before her, tall and cloaked, his one eye glowing like a star. His raven perched on his shoulder, its beak sharp as iron. "Sigrid," he said, his voice deep as the sea. "The storm is mine. The spear is yours. Claim your power, or it will claim you." She reached for Gungnir in the dream, but it burned, hot as fire. The rune on her shield flared, and pain shot through her, like lightning in her bones. Odin's voice grew louder. "Blood wakes it, will binds it. Choose, daughter." She woke with a gasp, her hand tight on Gungnir. The cave was quiet, the storm easing. Her shield lay beside her, the rune glowing faintly, then fading. Her body felt different, stronger, sharper, like her senses had been honed by a whetstone. She stood, testing her arms, her legs. Her movements were quick, precise, as if guided by an unseen hand. Bjorn watched her, his eyes narrow. "What happened to you?" Sigrid didn't answer. She didn't know, not fully. But the dream, the rune, Gungnir, they were connected, and she felt it in her blood. "The storm's passing," she said instead. "We move soon." Torf peered. Outside, no torches. "They've lost us, for now." Hilda smirked. "Or they're waiting to gut us at the cove." Sigrid gripped Gungnir, its runes warm under her touch. Let them try. As dawn broke, the storm cleared, leaving a gray sky and a sodden earth. The group left the cave, moving carefully toward the cove. Sigrid lead, her steps sure, her senses alive. She heard the rustle of leaves, the distant cry of a gull, sharper than before. Gungnir felt like an extension of her arm, and the rune on her shield pulsed faintly, as if whispering. At the cove, the skiff waited, untouched, but as they approached, arrows flew from the cliffs. Thrain's men, 6 of them, charged down, their black cloaks flapping. Sigrid raised Gungnir, her body moving before her mind caught up. She blocked an arrow with her shield, the rune flaring, and thrust a spear at the nearest warrior. It pierced his chest, clean and swift, as if guided by Odin himself. The others fought. Bjorn's axe cleaved a man's shoulder. Hilda's spear struck another butt. Sigrid was a storm. She moved faster than she ever had, her strikes sure, her shield a wall. 3 men fell before her, their blood soaking the pebbles. The last fled, and Sigrid let them go, her chest heaving. Bjorn stared, his axe dripping. "You fight like a god." Sigrid's eyes met his, hard. "I'm no god, I'm Sigrid." But as they boarded the skiff, pushing off into the fjord, she felt the truth. Something had changed in the cave, in the storm. Odin's power was waking in her, and it scared her as much as it thrilled her. Thrain was out there, his priest weaving dark magic. She had Gungnir, but would it be enough? Chapter 6. The stronghold siege. The skiff glided through the fjord's dark waters, its oars slicing silently under the gray dawn. Sigrid stood at the prow, Gungnir in her hand, its rune-carved shaft warm against her palm. The spear felt alive, like it knew her, and the rune on her shield pulsed faintly, as if echoing her heartbeat. Her blonde braids swung beneath her hood, her leather armor creaking as she scanned the black cliffs ahead. Thrain's stronghold loomed above, a fortress of stone and timber, its towers jagged against the sky. Smoke curled from its chimneys, and guards patrolled the walls, their spears glinting. Bjorn crouched beside her, his scarred face grim. "We're close," he whispered, his axe slung across his back. "The shrine's in the cliff, like Freya said, but Thrain's men are everywhere." Sigrid nodded, her jaw tight. The storm had delayed them, but they'd escaped Thrain's scouts at the cove, thanks to her newfound strength. The dream of Odin, the rune's glow, Gungnir's pullet had changed her. She moved faster, struck harder, as if the Allfather's blood burned in her veins. But Bjorn's eyes lingered on her, wary, and she didn't trust his Fenrir worship. His talk of the wolf god's hunger set her teeth on edge. Hilda steered the skiff, her dark braids damp with spray. Ketil and Torf rode, their breaths heavy, while Sven, the youngest, sharpened his dagger, his hands shaking. They were a small band, 6 against a fortress, but Sigrid had no choice. Gungnir was hers, tied to her blood, and Thrain would kill to take it. She'd fight to keep it. They beached the skiff in a hidden cove, tying it to a rock under an overhang. The path to the stronghold was steep, winding through jagged rocks and thorny scrub. Bjorn led, his steps sure, pointing out a thrall's trail he'd used before. "Quiet now," he said. "One sound, and we're dead." Sigrid followed, Gungnir light in her grip, her shield slung across her back. The rune's pulse was stronger here, like a drum in her chest. Her senses felt sharp. Every rustle of leaves, every distant gull's cry hit her like a blade's edge. Odin's power, she thought, or something else. She pushed the fear down, focusing on the mission. The shrine was carved into the cliff below the stronghold, its stone door marked with runes. 2 guards stood watch, their helmets dull in the dawn light. Bjorn's plan was simple. Torf would shoot one guard, Ketil and Hilda would take the other, and Sigrid and Bjorn would slip inside for the spear. Sven would guard the path. It was risky, but they'd come too far to turn back. Torf notched an arrow, his wiry frame tense. "Ready?" he whispered. "Now," Bjorn said. Torf's arrow flew, striking a guard's throat. He fell silently, blood pooling. The second guard shouted, raising his spear. But Ketil's hammer crashed into his chest, and Hilda's spear finished him. Sigrid and Bjorn sprinted to the shrine, slipping through the door as shouts echoed from the stronghold above. Sven crouched outside, his dagger ready. Inside, the shrine was dark, lit by a single torch. A stone altar stood at the center, and on it Gungnir, its blade gleaming, its shaft carved with runes that matched her shield. Sigrid's breath caught. It was real, just as Freya had said. She stepped forward, but Bjorn grabbed her arm. "Careful," he hissed. "The priest's runes, trap it." She saw them now, marks carved into the floor, glowing faintly, like embers. Her amulet, Thor's hammer, warmed against her chest, and her shield's rune flared. She ignored Bjorn, reaching for Gungnir. A shock ran through her, like lightning, but she didn't flinch. The runes flared brighter, then faded, and the spear came free in her hand. It felt right, like an extension of her arm. "Got it," she said, turning to Bjorn. His eyes gleamed, not with relief, but with hunger. Before she could speak, a horn blared outside. Shouts followed, boots pounding. Torf burst in, his bow drawn. Betrayed, he yelled. Sven's gone, he signaled them. Sigrid's stomach dropped. Sven, the quiet boy, had turned on them. Thrain's men swarmed the path, their black cloaks like shadows in the dawn. Ketil and Hilda fought outside, their weapons clashing, but they were outnumbered. Sigrid gripped Gungnir, her blood hot. "We fight our way out," she said. Bjorn nodded, but his eyes flicked to the spear, uneasy. "Stay close, girl." They ran from the shrine, joining the fray. Thrain's warriors then, maybe 12 charged with axes and spears. Sigrid moved like a storm, Gungnir a blur in her hands. She blocked a spear, thrust, and a man fell, blood spraying. Her shield took an axe blow, the rune flaring, and she struck again, felling another. Her body moved faster than thought, each strike precise, as if Odin guided her. Hilda fought beside her, her spear quick, but an axe caught her arm, and she stumbled. Ketil roared, his hammer crushing a warrior's skull, but arrows rained from the cliffs, one grazing his shoulder. Torf shot back, his arrows true, but there were too many. Sigrid's heart pounded, not with fear, but with power. Gungnir sang in her grip, and the rune's pulse drove her forward. She faced a giant of a man, his axe raised. He swung, and she ducked. Gungnir, piercing his side. He fell, eyes wide, as if seeing her runes glow. Another came, then another, and Sigrid fought like a god, her strength unnatural, her strikes deadly. But a shout broke her focus. Bjorn, cornered by 3 men. She ran to him, Gungnir flashing, and 2 fell before they could turn. The third fled, and Bjorn nodded, panting. "You're no girl," he said, half awed, half afraid. "We're not done," Sigrid said, pointing to the path. More warriors came, led by a figure in a black robe. Thrain's priest, his face hidden, a staff carved with runes in his hand. The air grew heavy, like before the storm, and Sigrid's amulet burned. "Run," she yelled. The group sprinted down the path, dodging arrows and blades. They reached the cove, the skiff bobbing in the waves, but Sven stood there, his dagger reed with blood. He'd killed the thrall, guarding the boat. "Traitor," Hilda snarled, lunging, but Sigrid stopped her. "No time," she said, shoving Sven aside. He stumbled, eyes wide with fear, and ran into the trees. The group piled into the skiff, rowing hard as arrows splashed around them. The priest's voice echoed, chanting words that made Sigrid's skin crawl. They escaped, the fjord swallowing their skiff, but Bjorn was grim. "Sven knew our plan," he said. "Thrain will follow. And that priest, he's worse than Thrain." Sigrid gripped Gungnir, its runes warm. She'd won the spear, but lost a man. Bjorn's wariness, Sven's betrayal, it all weighed on her. The rune on her shield pulsed, and she felt Odin's gaze, heavy as the cliffs. She was stronger now, but the fight was far from over. Chapter 7. The price of loyalty. The skiff rocked on the fjord's dark waves, its oars cutting through the water as Sigrid gripped Gungnir, its runes glowing faintly in the dawn's gray light. Her shield, slung across her back, pulsed with the rune of Odin, a steady beat that matched her racing heart. The air was cold, thick with the smell of salt and pine, and the black cliffs of Thrain's stronghold faded behind them. But the victory of stealing Gungnir felt hollow. Sven's betrayal had cost them. Bjorn was captured, left behind in the chaos of the shrine raid, and Thrain's warriors were closing in, their shouts still echoing from the shore. Hilda steered the skiff, her dark braids damp with sweat, her arm bandaged from an axe wound. Ketil rode, his giant frame hunched, blood seeping from the arrow graze on his shoulder. Torf, the wiry archer, scanned the cliffs, his bow ready. Only 4 of them remained, their faces grim, their breaths heavy. Sigrid's chest ached, not just for Bjorn, but for the trust shattered by Sven's treachery. She'd fought like a god in the shrine, Gungnir and the rune giving her strength beyond her years, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. We can't go back, Torf said, his voice low over the creak of oars. Thrain's men will gut us. Hilda spat into the water. Bjorn's probably dead already. He knew the risks. Sigrid's jaw tightened. Bjorn was no friend his. Fenrir worship made her skin crawl, and his hungry eyes on Gungnir set her on edge, but he'd fought for her, risked his life to get the spear. She saw him cornered in her mind, his axe swinging as Thrain's men dragged him down. She couldn't leave him, not like this. He's alive, she said, her voice firm, and he's one of us. Ketil grunted, his hammer resting on his knees. You're mad, girl. The stronghold's crawling with Thrain's dogs. We go back, we die. Then stay, Sigrid snapped, standing in the skiff, Gungnir in her hand. But I'm not abandoning him. He fought for me. I owe him. Hilda's eyes narrowed, but a flicker of respect crossed her face. You're Odin's blood, all right? Stubborn as a god. What's your plan? Sigrid didn't have one. Not fully. Her blood burned, Gungnir's weight steadying her, the rune on her shield pulsing like a call. We sneak in, she said. The thrall's path, same as before. Find the dungeons. Get Bjorn. Get out. Torf laughed, sharp and bitter. Sneak, after Sven sold us out. They'll be waiting. Then we fight, Sigrid said, her voice cold. Unless you're scared. Torf's smirk faded, and he looked away. Ketil nodded slowly. I'm in. But if we die, I'm haunting you, Odin's daughter. They beached the skiff in a hidden cove, far from the stronghold's main paths. The cliffs loomed, their shadows swallowing the faint light. Sigrid led Gungnir in one hand, her sword in the other, her shield strapped tight. The thrall's path was narrow, slick with mud from the storm, winding through rocks and scrub. Every snap of a twig, every gust of wind made her flinch, expecting Thrain's men. The rune's pulse was stronger now, like a guide, and her hammer grew warm against her chest. The stronghold's walls rose ahead. Stone and timber spiked with iron. Torches flickered on the ramparts, guards pacing. Sigrid's senses were sharp, her eyes catching every movement, her ears picking up the clink of armor. Odin's power, she thought, or the spears. She didn't know, but it drove her forward. Hilda pointed to a low grate near the cliff base, half hidden by moss. Drainage tunnel, she whispered. Leads to the dungeons. Thralls use it to dump slop. Sigrid nodded. That's our way in. They pried the grate open, its iron groaning, and crawled through, the tunnel tight and damp, smelling of rot and earth. Sigrid went first, Gungnir scraping the stone. The darkness pressed in, but the rune's faint glow lit her path, like a star in the night. They emerged in a dank corridor, its walls slick with mold, lit by a single torch. Chains rattled faintly, prisoners' voices echoed, and Sigrid froze. 2 guards approached, their spears tapping the floor. She gestured, and the group pressed against the wall, shadows hiding them. The guards passed, muttering about the priest's orders to watch for a girl with a rune. Sigrid's blood chilled. They knew about her. She led the way deeper, following the sound of chains. The dungeon was a maze of cells, each holding a skeletal figure or a pile of rags. Bjorn was in the last, slumped against the bars, his face bloodied, his axe gone. His scar stood out, stark against his pale skin, but his eyes lit when he saw Sigrid. You came, he rasped, voice raw. Foolish girl. Shut up, Sigrid said, forcing a smile. She tested the bar siren, locked tight. Ketil, hammer. Ketil swung, the hammer's blow ringing loud. The lock shattered, and Bjorn stumbled out, leaning on Hilda. They knew we were coming, he said, coughing. Sven talked. Sigrid's jaw clenched. He'll pay. Can you walk? Bjorn nodded, though his steps were unsteady. They moved back toward the tunnel, but a horn blared above, sharp and urgent. Boots pounded, and torches flared at the corridor's end. Thrain's elite guard 6 warriors in black cloaks, their armor heavy, Swords drawn blocked their path. Trap, Torf hissed, knocking an arrow. Sigrid raised Gungnir, her shield ready. The rune flared, and her amulet burned, hot as fire. Fight, she said, and charged. The battle was chaos. Sigrid moved like lightning, Gungnir piercing a warrior's chest before he could swing. Her shield blocked a sword, the rune glowing bright, and she struck again, felling another. Hilda's spear darted, Ketil's hammer crushed, and Torf's arrows flew. But the guards were skilled, their blades quick. Bjorn fought with a stolen dagger, weak but fierce. A guard lunged at Sigrid, his sword aimed at her heart. She blocked, but the force knocked her back, her amulet swinging free. It glowed, sudden and blinding, and a pulse of energy raw, wild burst from it, like a gust of wind. The guards staggered, some falling, their eyes wide with fear. Sigrid froze, her breath catching. What was that? Move, Bjorn yelled, snapping her back. They ran, the guards recovering, shouting for more. The tunnel was close, but a figure stepped into the torchlight, a man in a black robe, Thrain, priest, his staff carved with runes. His voice chanted, low and guttural, and the air grew heavy, like a weight on Sigrid's chest. She gripped Gungnir, the rune on her shield blazing. The amulet pulsed again, and she thrust a spear, not at the priest, but at the ground. Another burst of energy erupted, shaking the corridor, dust falling from the ceiling. The priest stumbled, his chant broken, and the group dove into the tunnel, crawling fast. They emerged in the cove, the skiff waiting. Arrows flew as they rode, but the priest's chants faded, and the fjord's waves carried them away. Sigrid's hands shook, Gungnir and her shield heavy with power. Bjorn watched her, his eyes sharp, not with gratitude but with something darker. What was that light? He asked, his voice low. Sigrid touched her amulet, still warm. I don't know, she said, but it was a lie. Odin's power, the rune, the spirit, was all waking in her. She'd saved Bjorn, but at a cost. His gaze, Hilda's silence, Torf's frowned. They didn't trust her now, not fully, and the priest had seen her power. Thrain would come harder, faster, as the skiff sailed into the dawn. Sigrid gripped Gungnir, the rune's pulse a warning. Loyalty had a price, and she'd paid it. But the hunt was tightening, and she wasn't sure who she could trust. Not Bjorn, not herself, not even the gods. Chapter 8. The prophecy unraveled. The skiff cut through the fjord's icy waters, its oars creaking under the strain of Ketil and Torf's rowing. Sigrid sat at the stern, Gungnir clutched in her hands, its rune-carved shaft warm despite the biting wind. Her shield rested against her side, the rune of Odin pulsing faintly, a steady thrum that matched her heartbeat. Her blonde braid was damp with spray, her leather armor scratched from the dungeon fight. The amulet at her neck, Thor's hammer still, tingled from the burst of energy that had saved them in Thrain's stronghold. Bjorn sat across from her, his scarred face unreadable, but his eyes flicked to Gungnir, wary and sharp. Hilda steered, her dark braids swinging. While the fjord's cliffs loomed like silent giants under the gray sky, they'd escaped Thrain's elite guard, but the cost was heavy. Sven's betrayal stung, and Bjorn's capture had nearly ended them all. Sigrid's mind churned her father's death, the rune's glow, the spear's power, the priest's chants. She'd felt Odin's strength in the dungeon, a force that moved her faster, struck harder, but it scared her. What was she becoming, and could she trust Bjorn, with his Fenrir worship and hungry gaze? We can't go to Kattegat, Hilda said, her voice cutting through the wind. Thrain's men will be watching. Torf nodded, his bow across his knees. We need a safe place, somewhere to plan. Sigrid's thoughts turned to Freya's words. Seek allies, not just warriors. Scout, she said. Freya mentioned one in Kattegat who knows the old tales. He might help us. Bjorn grunted, rubbing his bruised wrists from the dungeon chains. Skalds sing stories, not swords. What good's that? They know things, Sigrid said, her voice firm. Prophecies, runes, gods. If I'm Odin's blood, he'll know. What it means, Catil the giant shrugged. Better than running blind. Where's this scold? Freya said. He's near the old oak grove, west of Kattegat, Sigrid replied, remembering the Cirrus's sharp eyes. He's called Skjorn. Hilda adjusted the tiller, steering west. Let's hope he's not one of Thrain's dogs. The journey took hours, the fjord narrowing as they neared the grove. The sky stayed gray, heavy with the promise of snow. Sigrid's senses were sharp. Every creak of the skiff, every cry of a gull hit her like a spark. Gungnir's rune seemed to whisper, and her shield's rune pulsed stronger, as if sensing the grove's power. She felt Odin's gaze, heavy as the cliffs, and clutched her amulet for comfort. They beached the skiff near a rocky shore, hiding it among reeds. The oak grove stood ahead, its trees ancient, their branches twisted like old hands. Runes were carved into the trunks, faded but strong, and a small longhouse sat at the center, its roof thick with turf. Smoke curled from its chimney, smelling of pine and herbs. Sigrid led the way, Gungnir in hand, her shield ready. Bjorn followed, his axe loose, while Hilda, Catil, and Torf scanned the trees for trouble. The longhouse door opened before Sigrid could knock. A man stood there, old but strong, his hair white as frost, his eyes blue as the fjord. His cloak was patched, pinned with a bone brooch, and he held a staff carved with ravens. Sigrid, daughter of Eirik, he said, his voice deep and warm. I've been expecting you. Sigrid froze, her grip tightening on Gungnir. How do you know my name? Skjorn smiled, his eyes flicking to her shield. The runes sing of you. Come inside, Odin's daughter. The longhouse was warm, lit by a fire pit and oil lamps. Skins and scrolls lined the walls, and a harp sat in the corner, its strings gleaming. Sigrid's group sat on benches, their weapons close, while Skjorn poured ale into horns. Bjorn watched him like a wolf, but Sigrid felt a strange calm. The rune on her shield was quiet, as if at peace. Tell me of the prophecy, Sigrid said, setting Gungnir across her lap. Freya said, I'm Odin's last. Freya sent me for it. Skjorn nodded, his fingers tracing a scroll. The prophecy is old, sung before the sagas were written. Odin's heir, marked by his rune, will rise in a time of strife. They will either unite the clans under one banner, or bring Ragnarök, the end of all. Your blood, Sigrid, carries that fate. Her stomach twisted. Unite or destroy. That's my choice. Not a choice, Skjorn said. A path. Your power is waking Gungnir. The rune, the burst, in the dungeon. But it's wild, like a storm. You must tame it, or it will consume you. Bjorn leaned forward, his scar twisting, and Thrain. He wants her dead. Why? Skjorn's eyes darkened. Thrain's priest believes your death will appease the gods, give him Odin's favor to rule. They'll sacrifice you in a rite, spill your blood on an altar. Thrain seeks power, but the priest seeks Ragnarök. Sigrid's hand went to her amulet, still warm from the dungeon. How do I stop them? Control your power, Skjorn said. The rune and Gungnir are tied to your will. Train your mind, your body, your spirit. The grove is safe, its runes shield us from Thrain's priest. Stay here, learn, grow strong. Hilda frowned. How long? Thrain's coming. A few days, Skjorn said. Enough to start. The gods don't give power without cost. Sigrid nodded, though fear gnawed at her. She didn't want to be a god's pawn, but she couldn't run forever. Teach me, she said. Skjorn began that day. He led her to the grove, where the oaks hummed with old magic. He taught her to feel the rune's pulse, to channel its energy through her breath, her focus. She stood with Gungnir, striking at air, each move sharper, stronger, as if Odin guided her hand. The amulet glowed faintly, its power linked to her will. Scorn chanted runes, his voice weaving with the wind, and Sigrid felt her blood sing, like a fire waking. Bjorn watched, his axe idle, his eyes sharp. "You're changing," he said one night, as they sat by the fire. "Fenrir smells power, like that. Be careful, girl." Sigrid met his gaze, Gungnir across her lap. "I'm not your girl, I'm Odin's, and I'll use this power to kill Thrain." Hilda smirked, sharpening her spear. "That's the spirit, but Bjorn's right. Power like yours draws ice gods and men." Ketil and Torf nodded, their faces uneasy. Sigrid felt the weight of their stares. She was their leader now, but trust was thin. The rune pulsed, Gungnir hummed, and she knew her path was hers alone. Prophecy or not, Thrain was coming, his priest chanting doom. She'd train, she'd fight, and she'd face her fate, whatever the gods demanded. Chapter 9. The Battle of the Fjord. The skiff sliced through the fjord's dark waters, its oars creaking as Sigrid gripped Gungnir, its run-carved shaft thrumming under her fingers. Her shield rested against her side, Odin's rune pulsing like a heartbeat, stronger now, after days of training with Scorn, the Skulb. Her blonde braids swung beneath her hood, her leather armor scratched and blood-stained from past fights. The amulet at her neck, Thor's hammer, felt warm, a faint glow lingering from her lessons in the oak grove. Bjorn sat across from her, his scarred face grim, his axe ready. Hilda steered, her dark braids damp with spray, while Ketil and Torf rode, their breaths heavy in the cold dawn air. They'd left Scorn's grove at first light. His words, heavy in Sigrid's mind, "Control your power, or it will consume you." The prophecy haunted her. Odin's heir would unite the clans, or bring Ragnarök. She felt the power now, in her blood, in Gungnir, in the rune. It made her faster, stronger, but it also scared her. The visions of Odin grew darker, his one-eyed gaze colder, hinting at a sacrifice she didn't understand. "We're close to the open sea," Hilda said, her voice sharp over the wind. "But Thrain's men are tracking us. I saw their sails yesterday." Torf nodded, his bow across his knees. "They'll hit us soon. We're too few." Sigrid's jaw tightened. They were 4 against Thrain's army, and his priests' dark magic loomed like a storm. But she had Gungnir, and the rune's pulse drove her forward. "We fight," she said. "No running." Bjorn's eyes flicked to the spear, wary. "You're strong, girl, but Thrain's got numbers, and that priest, he's no man. Fenrir's hunger follows him." Sigrid met his gaze, unflinching. "Let Fenrir come. I've got Odin's spear." Ketil grunted, his hammer resting on his shoulder. "Hope it's enough." Odin's daughter. The fjord narrowed, its cliffs rising like walls, the water churning below. The air smelled of salt and pine, and a raven circled above, its cry sharp. Sigrid's heart skipped Odin's bird, watching. The skiff rounded a bend, and Hilda cursed. Ahead, 2 longships blocked the fjord, their prows carved with serpents, black cloaks flapping on their decks. Thrain's men, at least 20, armed with axes, spears, and shields. "Ambush!" Torf yelled, knocking an arrow. Sigrid stood, Gungnir in one hand, her shield in the other. The rune flared, bright as fire, and her amulet burned against her chest. "Row for the shore," she shouted. "We fight on land." Hilda steered hard, the skiff scraping against a rocky beach. The group leaped out, weapons ready, as Thrain's men jumped from their ships, splashing through the shallows. Sigrid led, her boots crunching on pebbles, Gungnir light and deadly. The rune's pulse was a drum, her blood singing with power. She felt Odin's strength in her limbs, her senses sharp every shout. Every glint of steel hit her like lightning. The first warrior charged, his axe raised. Sigrid blocked with her shield, the rune blazing, and thrust Gungnir into his chest. He fell, blood soaking the stones. Another came, then another, and Sigrid moved like a storm, her spear a blur, her strikes precise. She felled 3 men in moments, their bodies piling at her feet. Her allies fought beside Herbjorn's axe, cleaved a shoulder. Hilda's spear darted, Ketil's hammer crushed, but they were outnumbered. Torf's arrows flew, striking true, but a spear grazed his arm, and he stumbled. Hilda caught him, her own arm bleeding from a sword cut. Ketil roared, his hammer swinging, but arrows rained from the cliffs, one piercing his leg. Sigrid's heart pounded, not with fear, but with rage. These were her people, her fight. She wouldn't lose them. She raised Gungnir, the runes glowing, and drove it into the ground. A pulse of energy raw, wild burst from the spear, shaking the earth. Thrain's men staggered, some falling, their eyes wide with fear. The rune on her shield flared brighter, and her amulet burned, its light blinding. Sigrid charged Gungnir, piercing armor like cloth, her shield blocking blows with unnatural ease. She fought like a god, felling 5 more, their blood mixing with the fjord spray. But more came, their numbers endless. A figure stood on the cliffs, Thrain's priest, his black robe flapping, his staff raised. His chant echoed, low and guttural, and the air grew heavy, like a weight on Sigrid's chest. Her vision blurred, Odin's face flashing, one eye glowing, his voice cold. Sacrifice, daughter. She shook it off, thrusting Gungnir again, but the priest's magic slowed her, her limbs heavy. Fall back. Bjorn yelled, dragging Ketil from the fray. Hilda supported Torf, her spear red with blood. Sigrid stood her ground, Gungnir raised, the runes pulse a roar in her ears. She thrust the spear skyward, and lightning cracked, splitting the sky. The priest's chant faltered, and his men froze, fear in their eyes. Sigrid seized the moment, charging with her allies to the skiff. They pushed off, rowing hard, arrows splashing around them. The priest's voice rose again, but the fjord's current carried them away. Sigrid's chest heaved, her hand shaking on Gungnir. The battle had cost them. Ketil's leg was torn, Torf's arm useless, Hilda's strength fading. Half of Bjorn's band was dead or wounded, their blood on her hands. She looked at the spear, its runes dim now. I turned the tide, she said, her voice low, but it wasn't enough. Bjorn's eyes were hard. You're no mortal, girl. That power, it's not natural. Fenrir smells it. Hilda spat blood, her voice sharp. Shut up, Bjorn. She saved us. But Sigrid felt the truth. The power was growing, but so was the cost. Odin's visions were darker, his voice colder. Sacrifice. What did it mean? Her allies, her life. She touched her amulet, its warmth fading. The rune on her shield pulsed, a warning. Thrain was closer, his priest stronger. She'd won this fight, but the war was coming, and she feared what she'd become to win it. Chapter 10. The Betrayal. The skiff rocked gently on the fjord's dark waters. Its oars stilled as Sigrid and her dwindling band hid in a narrow cove, the cliffs towering like silent sentinels. Sigrid gripped Gungnir, its rune-carved shaft warm in her hands, the spear's power humming through her. Her shield rested against her side, Odin's rune pulsing faintly, a steady beat that echoed her racing heart. Her blonde braid was matted with sweat and blood, her leather armor scarred from the fjord battle. The amulet at her neck hammer felt heavy, its faint glow a reminder of the energy she'd unleashed to turn the tide against Thrain's men. Hilda sat at the tiller, her dark braids loose, her arm bandaged from a sword cut. Ketil, the giant, nursed his wounded leg, his hammer idle, while Torf clutched his bow, his arm stiff from an arrow graze. Bjorn sat apart, his scarred face shadowed, his axe across his knees. The air was thick with salt and the stench of blood, and a cold wind carried the distant cry of a raven. Sigrid's senses, sharpened by Odin's power, caught every sound, every creak of the skiff, every rustle in the reeds. The battle had cost them dearly, and Thrain's priest was still out there, his chants haunting her like a curse. We can't stay here, Hilda said, her voice low. Thrain's ships will find us. Torf nodded, wincing as he flexed his arm. We're too few. We need a plan, not another fight. Sigrid's jaw tightened. The prophecy Skjorn had shared Odin's heir would unite the clans or bring Ragnarök on her Gungnir's power, the rune's pulse, her visions of Odin, they were growing, but so was her fear. The Allfather's voice in her dreams was cold, demanding sacrifice. She'd saved her allies in the fjord, but at what cost? Her strength felt like a fire she couldn't control. Bjorn's eyes flicked to Gungnir, his scar twisting. That spear's our only chance, he said, his voice rough. But it's changing you, girl. Fenrir smells power like that. Sigrid met his gaze, her grip on the spear tightening. I'm not your girl, Bjorn. I'm Odin's blood, and I'll use this to kill Thrain. Bjorn's lips curled, not quite a smile, bold words. But power like yours draws trouble. The priest knows it. He's coming. Sigrid's stomach twisted. The priest's chants, his dark runes, they'd slowed her in the battle, like chains on her soul. She needed answers, a way to master her power before it consumed her. Skjorn had, said the sacred grove north of the fjord, held Odin's strength, a place where she could face her fate. She was about to speak when Bjorn stood, his axe glinting in the faint light. We need to talk, he said, his voice low, eyes darting to Hilda, Ketil, and Torf, alone. Sigrid frowned, but nodded, following him to the cove's edge, away from the others. Gungnir was light in her hand, her shield ready. The rune pulsed, warning her, and her amulet warmed. Bjorn stopped by a jagged rock, his back to the skiff, his axe loose in his grip. Your trouble, Sigrid, he said, his voice cold. Odin's blood or not, you're a threat. The priest told Muir. Death stops, Ragnarök. Blood chilled. The priest. You've spoken to him. Bjorn's scar twisted as he turned, his eyes hard. In the dungeon, before you came. He offered me a deal your blood for Fenrir's favor. I swore to deliver you. Her heart sank, betrayal cutting like a blade. She raised Gungnir, her shield up. You'd sell me to Thrain, after I saved you. Bjorn's face darkened. I serve Fenrir, not Odin. Your power will break the world. The priest sees it. I see it. Sigrid's rage flared, the rune blazing, her amulet burning. You're a coward, she spat. Fenrir's chained, and you're his dog. Bjorn swung his axe, fast and brutal. Sigrid blocked with her shield, the rune flaring bright, and thrust Gungnir, aiming for his chest. He dodged, his axe grazing her arm, blood seeping through her armor. The rune pulsed, her senses sharp, and she moved like lightning, striking again. Gungnir's tip caught Bjorn's shoulder, and he stumbled, cursing. Hilda's shout rang out, and she charged with Ketil and Torf, their weapons drawn. Traitor, Hilda yelled, her spear aimed at Bjorn. But Sigrid raised a hand, stopping them. He's mine, she said, her voice cold as the fjord. Bjorn lunged again, his axe swinging. Sigrid sidestepped, Gungnir piercing his leg. He fell to his knees, blood pooling, his eyes wide with pain and fear. You'll bring doom, he gasped. The priest knows. Sigrid stood over him, Gungnir raised, the rune blazed, her amulet glowed, and Odin's voice echoed in her mind. Sacrifice, daughter. She could kill him, end his betrayal here. But she saw Eirik in her mind, his blood on the shore, and her mother, Astrid, may be lost. She'd lost enough. Live, she said, lowering the spear. But if you cross me again, Fenrir won't save you. Bjorn stared, panting, then scrambled away, disappearing into the reeds. Hilda spat after him. You should have killed him, Sigrid shook her head, her heart heavy. He's broken. We move on. Ketil grunted, his leg bandaged but strong. Where to, Odin's daughter? North, Sigrid said. The sacred grove. Skjorn said, it's where Odin's power is strongest. I'll face my fate there. Torf frowned, his arms stiff, alone. Thrain's close. Sigrid looked at them, Hilda's fierce eyes, Ketil's steady nod, Torf's wary gaze. They'd fought for her, bled for her, but Bjorn's betrayal cut deep, and she couldn't risk more. "You've done enough," she said. "Get to safety. I go alone." Hilda's jaw tightened. "We're not cowards." "I know," Sigrid said, her voice soft. "But this is my fight. Odin's calling." They argued, but Sigrid's will was iron. She left them the skiff, taking only Gungnir, her shield, and a small pack of supplies. The grove was a day's trek through frost and forest, and she set out as the sun rose, its light cold and pale. The rune pulsed, guiding her, and her amulet warmed, a faint comfort. The forest was quiet, its pines heavy with snow, but she felt ice ravens in the branches, their cries sharp. Odin watched, and she feared what he'd asked. By dusk, the grove appeared, a circle of ancient oaks, their trunks carved with runes. The air hummed, heavy with power, and Sigrid's blood sang. She gripped Gungnir, the rune on her shield blazing. Thrain was coming, his priest's chants, a shadow in her mind. She'd face them here, alone, where Odin's strength was strongest. But Bjorn's words lingered. "Your death stops Ragnarök." Was she savior or destroyer? The grove held answers, and she'd find them more die trying. Chapter 11. The grove of Yggdrasil. Sigrid stood at the edge of the sacred grove, her boots sinking into frost-covered earth. The ancient oaks loomed around her, their gnarled branches twisting like old bones, each trunk carved with runes that hummed with power. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of pine and damp moss, and a faint mist curled through the trees, glowing under the pale moonlight. Gungnir, Odin's spear, felt alive in her hand, its rune-carved shaft warm, pulsing in time with the rune on her shield. Her blonde braid hung heavy, her leather armor scratched and blood-stained from battles past. The amulet at her neck, Thor's hammer, glowed faintly, a steady warmth against her chest. She was alone now, having left Hilda, Ketil, and Torf behind after Bjorn's betrayal. The weight of Iti's alliance with Thrain's priest, his belief that her death would stop Ragnar, cut deeper than any blade. But the grove called her, its power pulling like a tide. Skirn had said this was where Odin's strength was strongest, where she'd face her fate as his last daughter. The prophecy haunted her. Unite the clans, or bring the end of all. Her blood sang with Odin's power, but his visions grew darker, his voice colder, whispering of sacrifice. She gripped Gungnir, the rune on her shield flaring, and stepped into the grove. The oaks parted, revealing a clearing where a massive tree stood. Yggdrasil, the world tree, or its echo in Midgard. Its roots twisted into the earth, its branches reaching like arms to the sky. Runes glowed along its bark, and the air crackled, like before a storm. Sigrid's heart pounded, her senses sharp. Every rustle, every raven's cry hit her like a spark. 3 figures appeared in the mist, their forms shifting, neither fully human nor spirit. The Norns, fates of Norse myth, stood before her, one old, one young, one ageless. Their eyes piercing. "Sigrid, daughter of Odin," the old one said, her voice like cracking stone. "You bear his mark, his spear. Why do you come?" Sigrid stood tall, Gungnir steady. "I seek my path. The prophecy says I'll unite the clans, or bring Ragnarök. I need to know." The young Norn, her face soft, but eyes cold, stepped forward. "Your blood is power, but power is a blade. It cuts both ways. Will you wield it, or be wielded?" The ageless one raised a hand, runes glowing in the air. "Face the trial air of Odin, prove your will, or perish." The grove shifted, the mist thickening, and Sigrid's vision blurred. She stood on a battlefield, blood-soaked, bodies piled around her. Thrain's warriors charged, their black cloaks flapping, but she fought alone, Gungnir a blur, her shield blazing. The rune's power surged, her strikes deadly, but the bodies at her feet were her own: Hilda, Ketil, Torf, even her mother, Astrid. Odin's voice echoed, "Sacrifice, daughter." She screamed, thrusting Gungnir, But the vision changed. Now she stood in a hall, clans kneeling before her, their shields raised in unity. She held Gungnir, her amulet glowing, and peace reigned. But the Norns' voices cut through. Choose unity or doom. Your will decides. The vision faded, and Sigrid was back in the grove, her chest heaving. The Norns watched, their eyes unyielding. What do you choose? The old one asked. Sigrid's hands shook, Gungnir heavy now. I choose to unite, she said, her voice firm. I'll fight for the clans, not Ragnarök. I'll master this power. The ageless Norn nodded. Then take it, but know the cost. Odin's blood demands blood. The mist cleared, and the Norns vanished, their presence lingering like a weight. Sigrid felt stronger, Gungnir lighter, the runes pulse steady. She'd passed their trial, claimed her legacy, but the cost scared her. Sacrifice. What would it be? A horn blared, shattering the grove's silence. Sigrid spun, Gungnir raised, as figures emerged from the tree-strain's warriors, their black cloaks stark against the snow. At their head stood Thrain himself, a giant of a man, his beard black, his axe gleaming. Beside him was the priest, his black robe flapping, his staff carved with dark runes. His chant began, low and guttural, and the air grew heavy, pressing on Sigrid's chest. You're mine, Odin's daughter, Thrain roared, his voice like thunder. Your blood will make me a god. Sigrid gripped Gungnir, the rune on her shield blazing. You'll die first, she said, and charged. The battle erupted under Yggdrasil's shadow. Thrain's men 20, maybe more swarmed, their axes and spears flashing. Sigrid moved like lightning, Gungnir piercing armor, her shield blocking blows with unnatural ease. The rune flared, her amulet glowed, and her blood sang with Odin's power. She felled 3 men in moments, their bodies crumpling, but Thrain was a storm, his axe swinging with brutal force. She dodged, Gungnir thrusting, but Thrain's shield took the blow, its iron denting. The priest's chant grew louder, and Sigrid's vision blurred, her limbs slowing. Dark runes glowed around her, like chains in the air. She gritted her teeth, focusing on the rune's pulse, her amulet's warmth. She thrust Gungnir skyward, and a burst of energy raw wild exploded, shattering the priest's runes. His chant faltered, and he stumbled, eyes wide. Thrain roared, charging. His axe grazed her shoulder, blood seeping through her armor. Pain flared, but the rune's power surged, dulling it. She spun, Gungnir piercing Thrain's side. He grunted, swinging again, but she blocked, her shield blazing. The priest raised his staff, chanting anew, and the air tightened again, but Sigrid was ready. She drove Gungnir into the ground, and another pulse erupted, knocking Thrain back. His men faltered, fear in their eyes. Sigrid fought on, Gungnir, a blur, her strikes deadly. She felled 5 more, their blood soaking the grove's earth. Thrain rallied them, his axe swinging, but Sigrid was faster. She blocked his blow, Gungnir piercing his leg. He fell to one knee, cursing, and she stood over him, the rune blazing. Surrender, she said, her voice cold, or die. Thrain laughed, blood on his lips. The priest will finish you. Sigrid turned, but the priest was gone, his cloak a shadow in the trees. Thrain's men broke, fleeing into the forest, their courage shattered. Sigrid let them go, her chest heaving. The grove was quiet again, Yggdrasil's runes glowing faintly. She'd won, but the priest's escape gnawed at her. He'd seen her power, felt it. He'd come again. She looked at Thrain, his eyes defiant despite his wounds. You're beaten, she said. Tell your priest to stop. Thrain spat blood. He serves no man, not even me. Sigrid's heart sank. The prophecy, the Norns, Odin's voice, they all pointed to a greater fight. She'd chosen to unite, but the cost was coming. She left Thrain, too wounded to follow, and stood under Yggdrasil, Gungnir in hand. The rune pulsed, Her amulet warmed, and she felt Odin's gaze, heavy as ever. She was his daughter, his heir, but the war wasn't over. Chapter 12. The daughter's destiny. The sacred grove of Yggdrasil stood silent, its ancient oaks casting long shadows under the pale moon. Sigrid gripped Gungnir, its rune-carved shaft pulsing with warmth, the spear an extension of her arm. Her shield rested against her side, Odin's rune glowing faintly, a steady beat in her blood. Her blonde braid hung heavy with frost, her leather armor scarred and bloodstained from the battle just fought. The amulet at her neck, Thor's hammer, burned softly, its power a quiet hum after the Norns' trial. The air was thick with the scent of pine, moss, and blood, the grove's power crackling like embers. Sigrid's heart pounded, not from fear, but from purpose. She'd faced the Norns, chosen to unite the clans rather than bring Ragnarök, and defeated Thrain's warriors under Yggdrasil's shadow. But Thrain himself, wounded and defiant, knelt before her, his black beard matted with blood, his axe, Eustace at his side. The priest had fled, his dark chants a lingering threat, and Sigrid knew this wasn't over. The prophecy weighed on her, Odin's heir, savior or destroyer. She'd chosen her path, but the cost loomed, Odin's cold voice, echoing sacrifice. Daughter. Thrain's eyes burned with hate, though pain twisted his face. You can't win, he rasped, blood dripping from his side where Gungnir had struck. The priest will finish what I started. Your blood belongs to the gods. Sigrid's jaw tightened. She raised Gungnir, its runes flaring, and pointed it at his chest. Your priest ran, she said, her voice cold as the frost, and you're beaten. Yield, or die. Thrain laughed, a harsh, broken sound. Kill me, girl. It won't stop him. He serves Ragnarök. Her hand trembled, the rune on her shield pulsing, her amulet glowing. She saw her father, Eirik, bloodied, on the shore. Her mother, Astrid, may be lost to Thrain's raids. Killing him would be easy, justice for her pain. But the Norn's words rang in her mind. Your will decides. She'd chosen unity, not vengeance. She lowered Gungnir, just an inch. Live, she said, but swear to end this war. Thrain's eyes widened, then narrowed. You're a fool, he spat, but his shoulders slumped, his fight gone. Before Sigrid could answer, shouts broke the silence. Warriors emerged from the trees, not Thrain's, but others, their shields painted with wolves, ravens, and boars. Clans from across the fjords, drawn by tales of Odin's heir, their leaders stepping forward, axes lowered. An old jarl, his beard white as snow, spoke first. We saw the light, he said, pointing to the sky where Sigrid's power had flared. You wield Odin's spear. Are you his daughter? Sigrid stood tall, Gungnir steady, the rune blazing. I am Sigrid, daughter of Eirik, blood of Odin. I fight for the clans, not against them. The warriors murmured, some kneeling, their shields clattering. A woman, her armor gleaming, stepped forward. Thrain burned our homes, she said. If you're Odin's, lead us. Sigrid's heart raced. Lead. She'd never wanted that. Only to stop Thrain, to survive. But the grove's power, Yggdrasil's roots, the rune's pulse, they all pushed her forward. She looked at Thrain, then the clans, their eyes heavy with hope and fear. I won't rule you, she said, her voice clear, but I'll forge an alliance. Fight with me, not for me. Together, we stop Thrain's priest and his Ragnarök. The old jarl nodded, raising his axe. For Odin's daughter, the cry spread, shields banging, voices rising. Sigrid felt the weight of their trust, heavier than Gungnir. She'd united them, as the prophecy promised, but the priest was still. Out there, his dark runes a shadow. She turned to Yggdrasil, its branches swaying in the wind. This ends here, she said, driving Gungnir into the earth at the tree's base. The runes flared, bright as fire, and the ground trembled, as if the world tree accepted her vow. She buried the spear, its shaft sinking into the soil, a promise to wield her power for peace, not destruction. But as the clans cheered, a raven landed on Yggdrasil's lowest branch, its eye glinting. Odin's voice whispered, cold and clear, "Ragnarök still looms, daughter." Sigrid's blood chilled. She'd won this battle, united the clans, but the priest's escape meant the war wasn't over. Her amulet warmed, the rune on her shield pulsed, and she knew her fight, her sacrifice, was far from done. The clans gathered around her, their fires lighting the grove. Sigrid stood under Yggdrasil, her heart steady, despite the fear. She was Odin's last, his blood, his heir. She'd chosen unity, but the gods watched, and their will was heavy. Thrain was carried away, bound but alive, his fate to be decided by the clans. Sigrid looked north, where the priest had fled, and vowed to find him. Ragnarök could wait. She'd fight for Midgard, for her people, for herself.